Hello and welcome to Samuel Ramey Behind the Curtain, where we'll be hearing anecdotes about Samuel Ramey's life and career off stage or behind the curtain. I hope you enjoy this series. Hello!
Good day.
Today we're going to start out answering some questions that the viewers have submitted, and hopefully they'll get some answers.
We'll see.
We have a couple from Janice Fisher. First of all, what kind of warm-ups do you do?
Well, warm-ups, I usually spend like the day of a performance gradually warming up, doing, periodic scales and things, and then when I go to the theater, I usually continue doing, scales, fast scales, flexibility, sort of keeping the voice light, and then I usually sing, phrases of whatever I'm doing to get the voice going.
Good. And then there's one that you like to do at home every now and then.
Oh yes, my teacher, my old college voice teacher, Arthur Newman, used to he had a very famous, not really a vocalese, it's just going, "Oh boy, oh boy."
So every now and then in the Ramey household, we hear this.
Yeah.
Just randomly.
I'm a little crazy.
Arthur Newman also used to give you some advice about the night before a performance. What did he say?
No pizza, when you had performances coming up. No pizza, if you know what I mean.
Pizza. I wish I had met him.
He would have liked you.
Oh, okay. All right. Another question from Janice was, what are your feelings about costumes and makeup? Do you have any favorites or least favorites?
Costumes and makeup. Well, I'd have to hearken back to, of course, the New York City Opera production of Mephistopheles. When I did the revival in 1977, I believe, Charles Elson was hired to design a makeup for me. So I remember going to his apartment. Charles Elson was actually had been a former chorister at New York City Opera and got interested in makeup. And I don't know where he got his training, but he was the most incredible makeup artist. And so I remember going to his apartment and sitting with my face totally covered with plaster, and he made like a death mask of my face, and then he built a partial mask, which gave me protruding hoods over my eyes here, and then it came down, and then it emphasized, built up the cheekbones. So I put that on every performance, and of course the basic costume of Mephistopheles was basically a bodysuit with a nude body drawn on it.
The pictures are quite amazing.
Yeah, there's some good pictures, but I remember other things too. I remember when I did Attila at the City Opera. Also, that time, Charles Elson did a makeup for me for the premiere, and it was fabulous. And then later on, a gentleman came to City Opera who had worked with Charles Elson, had trained was sort of a protege of Charles Elson. His name was Robert Baker, who was also a really fine makeup artist. And of course, the costumes for Attila were were wonderful too. I remember a production I did at the Paris Opera of Meyerbeer's Robert le Diable. The idea was by the whole concept of the production was by a Greek gentleman named Patrika Ionesco, and it was he had never directed an opera before. He was primarily a designer, but it was fabulous, and those are the ones that
Stand out.
stand out in my mind.
I really liked the costumes for your Attila in Paris
Jean Moreau was the famous,
actress.
French movie actress, was the director.
Well, she came into your dressing room to look at your costumes, and you had this beautiful red coat that you wore over something else. And she looked at it and she said, "What would it look like with just the coat and not the underneath part?" So you tried that on, and of course your chest was showing. Oh, she loved that. She said it was very animal in her very deep smoker's voice.
Yes.
But those were beautiful costumes too.
Yeah.
I think that we also need to mention some other makeup artists, though. In Chicago, Lyric Opera, during, I know, my years there and your years there, Rick Jarvie
Yeah.
was an amazing
Fabulous, yeah.
wig and makeup artist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rick Jarvie, and
And at the Met,
I had various people at the Met. Victor at the Met was the primary guy for a long time. And other people, they had quite a large staff of makeup artists at
right.
the Met. Okay, and at the San Francisco Opera, I remember very well. Bill Jones was a very fine makeup artist, and but we had the costumes too. There were questionable costumes.
Yeah.
Did this production of Semiramide at the festival in Aix-en-Provence in 1980, I think it was. And it was directed and designed by an Italian gentleman, wonderful actually, Pierluigi Pizzi. I did a number of things with him at La Scala and Pesaro, the Rossini Festival. But this production was, he designed and the sets and costumes, everything. He did it all. But the costumes for the men were, I remember the tenor and myself and the other bass, we all had, they looked like fireplace mantles that they went overhead and sat on the shoulders, and then the costumes were on top of this. And they were very
cumbersome,
yes, and it didn't make singing all those notes in the part of Assur easy.
I find it difficult singing if you have to wear a mask. Even if it's, just one of these like half masks, the sound still goes like up into the mask and sounds muted. And some hats too do the same thing.
Oh, hats, yes. Anyway, it was doing Anna Bolena at New York City Opera. I think it was in 1973 or 73, I think. I did the small part of Rochefort, which is Anna Bolina's brother. And I remember going out the first time in costume, and I had a little hat that just sat on my head, you know, and came down, and I went out and I started to sing, and I thought, where's my voice? Where's my voice? Well, it was the first time that I had worn a hat that really bothered me, and ever since I've been very dubious anytime I had to put a hat on stage.
You like to remove it as quickly as possible
Yes,
after
yes,
you've made your entrance.
yes.
All right, everyone's
I
seen the
could walk
hat.
around holding my hat.
This next question is from Dagmar. You did a lot of traveling and spent a lot of time away from home. How did you cope with that? Any travel nightmares?
I was in Italy. I did a series of performances of Rossini's Stabat Mater, and I remember doing a performance of it in Bologna. When we got up in the morning, there was weather issues. It was fog, so all the flights out of Bologna had been canceled. So I remember sending an email or something to calling. I think calling. I didn't have email then.
Before email.
A travel agent in New York, and she said, "Well, if you can get to Rome, you can get a flight out of Rome." And you know, and she used to give us the stickers to change the airline information on our airline tickets. You can't do that anymore, but
Back in the good old days.
back in the good old days. And so we and I remember my tenor colleague Chris Merritt was the tenor in the Stabat Mater, and so we took a car from Bologna to Rome, and had our tickets, you know, changed and flew out of there. But the sort of nightmarish thing about this was there was, if you remember, this was 19, I think in the mid 80s, 1985 maybe. There was a terrorist bombing of the Rome airport in that year, and it happened just a few days after we flew out of the Rome airport. Chris was flying the airline where this bombing took place in the terminal of the airline that he was flying. I don't remember if it was Pan Am or TWA. I think it was TWA. And so yeah, that was kind of a nightmare. I was in San Francisco for the Robert Carson production of Mephistopheles.
Esterno e a lei l'inferno. Scherno e riso il paradiso. Oh per Dio, che rido anch'io.
Well, it was the American premiere of it. We had done it. We had done it the year before in Geneva, and so finished that run in San Francisco. And the next thing on my schedule, I flew to my hometown of Colby, Kansas, to do a recital. The earthquake happened just about exactly a week after my last performance of the Mephistopheles in San Francisco, and there was a TV crew that had been in San Francisco, and they were doing a series on me for there was a show back then on CBS, the CBS Sunday morning news show. They used to do a feature on people in the arts. And so they were in the process of filming one of these about me, and the television crew came to Colby and covered my recital there.
One of the world's greatest. We're proud of everybody.
Went to see you in Chicago.
His friends and neighbors in Colby, Kansas have always felt that Samuel Ramey was the best.
Olivia, you're looking great. It's good to see you.
On a trip back home, he went to the local museum, which was paying him tribute.
Where was this one taken? Do you know where that one was taken, Mom?
The one with the cowboy hat?
Yeah.
I think that was taken up where we live now. I know it was.
This aria is sung by the devil. And I'm sure that many people who knew me when I was a little kid growing up here in Colby can understand why I like to play the devil. N'ouvre ta porte, ma belle, que la bogue. It was a very eerie feeling, really. I mean, here I was singing on this stage in the old community building where I used to go to when I was 14, 15 years old. I used to go to I used to be a subscriber to this same concert series, that I was appearing on. And racked with pain, tote that badge, lift that veil, get a little drunk, and your lands in jail. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Hi, Penny. How are you?
Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. Did I get Phil's autograph, too?
Ron, I kept looking at you. I thought that was you. How are you? It's always, I think, a nice compliment for me when they say, "Well, you haven't really changed." I don't know what they expect, but they said you're still the same old Sam.
And then when the earthquake happened, they were told to leave Colby and go to San Francisco to cover the earthquake.
Never mind Sam Raimi, there's an earthquake.
Yeah, I think they'd pretty much finished with me.
It sounds very glamorous traveling to all these different parts of the world, but you're gone for a very long time and you have to pack
Right.
for that amount of time.
Yeah, that was always a problem because I can remember one time, I think it was sometime in the 1980s, that I was going to Europe, and I would be out of the country, out of the United States for 7 months. So, packing for 7 months away from home is a bit of an issue. Yeah, I mean, you're packing for 2, maybe 3 different seasons for one thing. So,
And there are also, you have to figure out how many formal events you're going to attend.
yeah,
So you have to pack nice clothes, the appropriate shoes, the appropriate man bag.
yes, the man bag, very important. Or MERS.
Yes. So it always takes up a lot of room. But
Yeah, back then I think you were limited to, was it 44 pounds, something like that. Anything, then you started paying overweight.
we always paid overweight,
Yeah, I know.
especially when we started traveling with our son.
Hmm.
Because traveling with children,
Yeah,
they have a lot of stuff.
pack and play, toys,
And how did we pack those things? Do you remember?
yeah. Well, we had a big duffel bag that we used for him.
Golf
But
bag.
then we had a golf bag
Yeah.
too, a golf club bag that we would pack full of his stuff.
That's where the pack and play went, and that's where the bigger toys went.
Yeah,
Besides him having to have his own suitcase for his clothes and diapers and formula, and it was a joy.
it was.
And we had to pack for ourselves too. But good times.
Good times.
The glamorous life of a
Yeah, very glamorous.
traveling performer. Okay, Dagmar also wants to know about which European languages do you speak?
Yeah, I don't really, I'm not fluent in any other language. I'm embarrassed to admit. It was one of my regrets in my career is that I did not spend more time learning languages when I was preparing my career. But so that's one of the things I always tell young singers: languages, very important, languages. But I can sort of stumble by in French, German, and Italian. I can, ask questions, and
Basic questions.
if I'm asked a question, that could be a problem. But
Although making reservations at restaurants is difficult if you aren't fluent.
yeah,
And we didn't stay in hotels where there was a concierge. We stayed in apartments.
right.
So
And
we were-
also arranging babysitters, also in all these foreign cities.
it wasn't just a nightmare. It was scary because
Yeah.
you're leaving your baby with somebody,
Yeah,
We did find some good babysitting services,
we did. Yeah.
but yeah. And we didn't travel with a nanny. Some people do.
Hmm.
I don't know how they afford it.
They're not bases.
Juliana Taramella would like to know, does your pierced ear have meaning?
My pierced ear, it does not really have a meaning. I don't think. I never thought of it.
Just felt like getting your ear pierced?
Yeah, it was when I did it, it was I think in 1998, and I think it was just it was the one earring in a man's ear was sort of becoming a fad.
I think it looks good.
So I just went out one day and got my ear pierced.
She also says, speaking of pranks, because in the last episode we talked about Claudio Abbado
Right.
coming up with a couple pranks there.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been on the receiving end of any? You yourself were the prankster.
Yeah, well, we could actually go back to my first experience in opera, which was in Central City, Colorado. I was in the chorus of Don Giovanni and Il Trovatore, but this happened in Don Giovanni. We decided there were several of us, we apprentices, who were servants in the last scene of Don Giovanni. We were Giovanni's servants, so we stood around and we had trays of drink and food and things, waiting to serve Don Giovanni when he wanted. So Don Giovanni was, in this case, Norman Treigle, and so I remember I had a tray with a piece of fake meat of some kind, and they would always put on the end of the tray some chicken, which Giovanni would take. I remember as I served it, his line was, "I will try this leg of mutton, see the envy in his eyes, and so fine. So we thought, well, we're coming up to the last performance, so that's when you always play the jokes, on the last performance day. So I brought in a banana, which I sort of halfway peeled and put it on in place of the chicken. And came the time, I walked over to Mr. Treigle's table, and I sat down. I served the meal, and he didn't bat an eye. He just looked at it and sort of looked up at me and smiled and said, "I will try this leg of banana, see the envy in his eyes." And so, yeah, and that's, I do remember another time at New York City Opera. I was doing Colline in Bohème, and I don't remember who a lot of the other singers were. I remember the tenor was a good buddy of mine named Jack Trussell, and so in the fourth act of Bohème, Colline, comes in with Chenard and comes in with a fish, una ringa, and so I went out, and at the City Opera, the prop was a pretty real looking rubber fish, and so I went out and on the day of the performance and bought a real fish. I think it was about a foot long trout, or I think it was, and took it in that night, and of course it sat in my dressing room, for 3 acts. It got pretty fishy, and I took it out. I took it out, and I gave it. I remember Jack Trussell had a good time handling that fish. I don't think Mimi appreciated that he had been handling that fish.
Victor Christie says, were there any musical singers, in your opinion, that you were influenced by?
When I first got interested in opera, especially after I decided I wanted to be an opera singer, I really collected a lot of records of all the Golden Age singers. I had many LPs of Pinza, Siepi, Jerome Hines. I mean, all of these guys, Paul Poisson and Journet. I remember listening to all of them. So all of those wonderful singers from the Golden Age, were very influential on me. I used to spend a lot of time listening to them.
Did you have a favorite?
I probably the one who I said influenced me the most was probably Ezio Pinza, simply because it was his that, remember that first LP that I bought when I was in college of Ezio Pinza singing arias. That's what really sparked my interest in opera. So I would say Pinza.
So I know that Siepi was one of your favorites.
Yes.
And you have a little story about him.
I do, yes. I collect, I have a pretty nice collection of autographs of some singers and composers. So I had a contact in New York that sold these things or had these things for sale. So he showed me this wonderful, it was an autograph picture of Siepi as King Philip in Don Carlo. It was taken when the year he made his Metropolitan Opera debut in 1950. He had also a copy of the program of that performance, of his debut performance. So I bought these two things and I had them, and then I had another friend who lived in San Francisco, is a photographer named Robert Kahn, and he knew Siepi and was sort of in contact with him, and so I called Bob and asked him. I said if I had told him I had bought this picture and program that I would like to get autographed by Pinza and by Siepi. And I said, if I would send these to you, could you send them to Siepi and ask him if he would autograph them for me? And he said, oh, here's his number. Just call him. I said, just call Cesare Siepi. And so he said, sure, just call him. So there I was with Siepi's phone number. And so a while later, probably a couple of weeks later, when I got up the nerve one day, I decided to call him. So I did, and I dialed the number, and I'm holding the phone, and I hear "Pronto." It was a very deep voice, and I said, Mr. Siepi, I said, my name is Sam Raimi, and I'm interested in I explained. He said, oh, Sam, how are you? Nice to hear from me. So I was very pleased that he knew who I was. So anyway, I do have this nice photograph and program, nicely framed. We haven't gotten them up in the house yet, but we will sometime.
Ecco che quella cerca me no,